Welcome to the Church Collective podcast. In this episode, myself and Chris had the opportunity to talk to Benjamin Hastings about his self-titled album, which is really just a journey for Benjamin of songwriting, for seeing like what the Lord has done in and through his life. And it was just, wow, what an incredible conversation. He's got a ton of insight into just his songwriting process, into being able to wrestle with the Lord on big concepts and knowing that God can see you through it. So I think you're going to be encouraged by this. I know myself and Chris were. So here we go.
Album is out. Finally, feels like I've been working on this forever. I think the first time I kind of really started talking about it was probably 5 years ago, and then probably 3 years ago actually started working on it. And yeah, so it's really long. It's like 25 songs, and that's kind of because. So as I said, it's working on it for 3 years, so they've kind of accumulated, but also because as I was, I guess the last 3 years, really, I found myself kind of just going through a lot of different things. I was wrestling with God a lot about my faith and about a lot of the things that he says he is. And yeah, so I kind of find myself in this spiral of kind of confusion and doubt. But at the same time, I'm like still, I still do what I do for work, if that makes sense. There's still the practical. Like I'm touring in South America with United, singing these songs, and that kind of spiraled me further, where I was having this like full imposter syndrome kind of moment where I was like, if these people knew what was going on in my head, they probably wouldn't want me to be doing this. But I'm trying my best to be sincere and do it in all honesty and integrity. And really, I think in hindsight, I can look back at that and say, well, I was just exercising faith in those moments. But it felt really weird. And like there was a big tension. And so much of the record actually came out of that dichotomy of, and the record feels like that, I think. Like one song is a worship song, and then the next song is like, God, are you there? And then the next song is like a worship song, and the next song is like, I think you're there. It's like it's kind of all of those things pushed up beside each other. And I guess another reason why it took so long is because I didn't want to release it while I was still, I guess, in the worst of that place. Because I remember he's my buddy Chris would call me and he'd be like, bro, when are you gonna release a record? When are you gonna release a record? And I was like, man, I want to, but I've got the songs, probably like 10 songs that I could release right now. And I was like, if I do, this is gonna be the most depressing record of all time. So like, I was like, I'll do these songs, but there needs to be some light at the end of this tunnel. And thankfully there is. Thankfully, it's like, I guess the big grand resolve in it is that like, I'm going to get through this. And that's a song and at the very end called So Help Me God.
Yeah.
And yeah. And there's a line, sorry, I'm rambling now, but there's a line right at the start that kind of, which I wrote really in the heart of everything, which says, if faith is a fight, well, I'm going to win. And I feel that speaks to what the record is. And it kind of is me kind of staying in the ring through the ups and downs of this crazy life, and kind of still. So I'm really grateful to have the song out. I'm grateful for everyone that went on that journey with me, and I'm sorry to have the album out. That feels weird to say, and yeah.
My goodness, that I mean, just I wasn't aware of like that stuff. Like I think that's going to be incredibly encouraging for so many worship leaders to just hear, well, hey, if Benjamin Hastings is like wrestling with God and God meets him and like, speaks to him through that, like, well, maybe there's hope for me. Cause man, that's that's a common theme right now, of just a lot of people wrestling with it all. And sadly, a lot of people leaving, from it.
Man, that completely, actually because the whole album's a bit of an overshare, to be honest. And some of this stuff, as I'm just putting it out, I was like, do I want to say this? Like, is this too much? But my real honest hope is for those people that, like, or people like me that at the time, I guess that they just feel a little less crazy, that are a little more human, or a little, it's like, okay, there's a line in the song, Faith is, it starts, it's like, I'm not a lost sheep. I just feel alone in the flock. And that to me is kind of that's for those people. I mean, it was for me at the time, but it's kind of like that's my real heart behind it, is those people that are finding themselves in the fringes, finding themselves pushed towards the fringes, but they still feel like, no, there's a way for me to like have these feelings and kind of reconstruct my faith and however I need to at this moment. Sorry, that came out wrong, but you know what I'm trying to say, like,
Yeah.
get to the kind of rebuild so that I have something that's going to last me for the next little while.
Yeah.
And for those people to not feel alone in
Yeah.
that, because I think I did a little bit. I felt
Sure.
alone. I felt like it was either you got to be like faith preacher confident, or you got to like be really cynical. And I was like, where's that middle ground where you're like,
Right.
where's
Yeah.
that middle ground? Yeah, you're not like just bashing everything, but you also are like accepting that maybe everything's not 100% right.
Sure.
So yeah, that's what I was going for.
My goodness. Yeah.
When did you start writing it?
I mean, yeah, actively right to middle of 2019. So right in the middle of that was when that tour was that I referred to in South America, and that was kind of where it all started. I mean, I have some songs on there that I've been working on for about 10 years that just kind of eventuated finally after a long time. But I would say actively working, I'm making it a body of work 2019, and then I started recording started 21, I think, in Sydney. No, started 20. Wait, what year was last year? No, 21. There we go.
It's all blurred at this point.
Yeah. It's such a blur.
So you're writing this through COVID.
Yeah, which probably didn't help either.
Wow. And
yeah,
were you collaborating with anybody, like with any writers, or were you doing this remotely?
yeah. So I do. I mean, every song except for a couple of little there's a couple of little like short, at least. I wrote most of them myself, but yeah, I worked with a lot of people on this. It'd be hard to even list them all, but I worked with the boys from United, so Joel and Dylan. Chisholm helped produce a lot of it. Aiden, he's a good buddy of mine. Song Fielding. I wrote with in Nashville when I got over here. I wrote with Hank Bentley a lot. He was really instrumental in getting it over the line. He produced a bit as well. David, sorry, my phone's buzzing. And who else? There's a song in there with Brian Farler. There's a song there. I mean, there really is probably. There's probably about 30 writers on there. But I really enjoyed co-writing, and to me, it's kind of the more the merrier. Like if it's making a song better, I've never been opposed to as many people as we need on there. Like Eden, which is the one I was saying took me like 10 years. I mean, I think there's 7 writers on that one. So, and so I'm really grateful to all those guys for doing that and for all being willing to kind of dilute it to 7 people.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm really proud of where it came out, and so I think Brandon's on that song as well. Yeah, I don't know. Sorry, there's a lot. I should probably get a list. Pay everyone.
Where did you record it? Like, where'd you end up tracking it?
Yeah, so that's the other thing about this record that's kind of interesting. It everywhere. So we started in Sydney. So 5 of the songs kind of started there. Like songs like Homeward and Father's Blessing, they're pretty much all done in Sydney. But then some of the stuff, man, a lot of it was in Nashville. Some of it was in LA. Some of it was in Orange County, which is kind of LA. And then some of it was in London. We were in our last, we went there to see my parents and to switch over our visas. And then we ended up getting stuck there for 4 months because the embassy closed. So I ended up kind of having to do a bunch of it in Ireland, which was actually really fun and sweet. I wrote a ton of it in this little like shed thing my parents have. They turned it into a studio for me, which was really nice, and did a bunch of it in there. And with a friend, an old friend of mine, he has a studio called Fra. I don't even know where he is. It's not Newry. Sorry for if you're hearing this. It's called Safe Place Studios. I want to give them the plug, but I can't remember exactly where we are in Ireland. And then a bit in London, which was actually really fun as well to do some vocals there. But yeah, it was kind of everywhere, and trying to get it over the line at the end, where you have like the guy mixed it, Ben Wincott, he's in Sydney, and the producer would be in Nashville, and then I'm in LA. So trying to get like a time zone where we could all talk to each other was an absolute nightmare. Like he would mix it through the day, and then I jump in a call with him at like 12 at night. But by that point, it's already 2 in the morning in Nashville. So it just was crazy those last couple of weeks.
Who was the producer?
Well, it's kind of, honestly, there was so many. So Chislett produced on a lot of them and kind of ended up being a bit of a glue. Even where there was other producers, he kind of sat as a bit of an umbrella just to try to tie the whole thing together on a lot of them. And then on other ones, Hank Bentley did a lot of them himself. I'll give you the list of producers because they're all amazing. So yeah, Michael Chislett, Hank Bentley, David Leonard, Ben Tan did a bunch. Judah co-produced one of them, and am I missing anyone? And then Tenny and D-Mac kind of came in and did some of the extra stuff. I think that's everyone. I hope I haven't missed anyone. But yeah,
like everybody.
It's crazy when you have such a huge network between like Hillsong people and like CCM Nashville people. Like I don't even know how you would pick who you're gonna work with, you know?
Yeah, and I kind of did it. That was kind of it was. I was like, everyone up for being involved. We were actually talking about that. We had a little celebration on the bus last night when it turned midnight and it came out, and that was one of the things we talked about. The fact that I think I was looking around the bus, like gonna like thank a couple of people, and then I realized like every single person on this bus contributed in some way, shape, or form, which was actually really cool. Like I'm really willing that everyone was willing to just kind of throw in and do some stuff. Like even like Jad and Crocker from United came in and sang some BVs for me on the last couple of days, and there's a lot of little bits like that. So it was really fun. Actually, really collaborative.
I was listening through like some of the songs this morning, which was fantastic, but my attention got caught by Nelder Grove, which I think not a whole lot of people would know what that is. Like, you got any insight to like specifically naming that like talk a little bit about that song, or even, I mean, it's like, yeah.
I mean, that song is one of the ones I was kind of scared to put out. So it's called Cathedrals of the Nelder Grove, and which kind of sounds like a Lord of the Rings book that didn't make it. Nelder Grove is it's one of the places where giant sequoias grow in Northern California, and so I was kind of double dipping. I wrote a song a couple of years ago for Hillsong called Seasons, and so I was kind of double dipping on the sequoia metaphor, and and that song is really it's a bit of a commentary on well, like our church has gone through a lot in the last couple of years, and that is kind of my commentary on it. And I could dive in, but I'm really
no, that's cool. Yeah,
I feel like
just everybody just go listen to the album. Yeah.
yeah, the song probably says it better than I'll be able to articulate. But yeah, that one felt a bit scary to put out there. Yeah, pretty honest, but there's a bit of hope in the end. I mean, the thing that I'll say this, the thing that and you'll hear it at the end. There's an ecologist starts talking that I found on him. I just found him on YouTube randomly. It's called Chad, and the like 200 views. But I listened to it, and I was like, oh my goodness, this guy's like, the metaphor in this is insane. So I just reached out to him and I was like, bro, can I sample this? And he was like, yeah, I'd love that.
Wow.
And so someone had told me this, so I went and looked it up. And sequoias, in order to reproduce, need fire, and not just any kind of fire, but like intense fire. A fire, as Chad says in the video, a fire strong enough that it's actually going to kill some of the giant sequoias. But what you get in the bargain is hundreds of more giant sequoias. And I thought that was just, especially in light of there being the sequoia song before, which was kind of based in the winter. I thought that was a really cool way to develop the story a little bit. And I guess, well, yeah, I guess in it, we're the sequoia, and yeah, you have to just listen to the song to find out whether we made it or not. I don't know. I don't even know if there's that.
That's great. There's like it's almost like the MCU. Like you've got like layers from different like you got to listen to everything that Benjamin's put together to like get the whole story.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It is a little actually.
Yeah. Did you like? I'd love to hear like so like. I mean, so you're wrestling in the middle of all this, but were you like, there's gonna be like, but you're still like songwriting in it. Like, were you? What kind of sense did you have on like either this is going to be really awesome at the end or this is going to be a train wreck? What was your thought in the middle of doing this?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of a lot of it didn't feel good writing, like because it felt, some of it did, but yeah, I was kind of worried that it was going to be a bit of a train wreck, and that it didn't make sense. It's that there's so many different kind of things on there, as in like I wrote like a song like that, the cathedrals, or Faith Is, or Dancing with My Shadow, they kind of push in one direction, but then there was like songs even like Homeward or Eden that were kind of more like sort of united-y kind of worship songs. And then that's the thing about Praise is so different as well. It's kind of a bit more like I don't want to say CCM, but it kind of is like, it has like positive sort of that kind of flavor to it. And so I was like, how on earth am I going to tie all these things together? But I was like, but I want to say it all, and I want to do it all. And so really, I think that's one of the reasons it ended up becoming 25 tracks, because I was like, if I'm going to show that side of myself, I need to figure out a way that it's not like, oh, that's an island over there and this is another island over there. It was like, I need to show all the steps between.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of there's a lot of like, it really is kind of all of me and all the things that I've kind of put my hand to over the last 10 years, I guess, and showing all the different sort of aspects and sides of that. And actually, I'm really proud of how it all came together in the end, even the way that most of and stuff, and the way we were able to do it with the keys. And it's like a that sounds arrogant to say, but it's like a theory class in like the circle of fifths, like the way that the songs that bump up against each other, the way there is a really good sort of like musical narrative as well as a sporadic me narrative, I guess.
Yeah, sure. Wow.
I'm super I love your songwriting and I love your melodies. Like, to me, you write some of the best melodies because they're so unpredictable. You know what I mean?
That's
like the intervals you use, like even in the past, like in some of the Hillsong stuff, like it's just out of nowhere, you know, like, and it's like you can't predict like where you're gonna go on every verse, you know, like how did you, is that just natural for you, or do you think about that? Like, I want to make these like super interesting melodies.
I mean, it's a good question. I mean, thank you firstly, but I think it's probably a little bit of both. Like, I think naturally, I mean, I grew up in Ireland, so I grew up listening to like you know, like the rambling Irish kind of poets, singer songwriters like Damien Rice and whoever else. And so I think that side of is kind of embedded in my writing. But then I also grew up like in Salvation Army, and we had a big focus on like brass music and hymns. And so I think probably a lot of the intervals that I choose are probably from that, like the yeah, like kind of classical, almost classical music, or brass music, hymns. I think that's kind of in me somewhere. But then, yeah, combined with the sort of like rambly kind of vibe, it's hard to say. So I think that is kind of my natural go-to, is somewhere between all of that mixed together. And I think you see that, actually, I've noticed that in other Irish songwriters, like someone like Dermot Kennedy is doing really good at the minute in the poppy kind of world. He does a similar thing, and it's funny because we're the same age, so we probably just grew up eating the same food.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I think something to that effect. But I try to be well, I don't try to be. I have studied songwriting a lot, as much as I could, and so a lot of what I do is intentional, but I try for it to be natural, if that makes sense. The way I used to teach songwriting at a college in Sydney, and one of the things I'd say to them, this is kind of a disgusting metaphor, so sorry if you're eating your breakfast, but one of the things I'd say to them is eat everything you can and then throw up. So like try and learn, try to know as much as you can about songwriting, but then when you get in a songwriting session, try to not think about a single thing. Try to just, and over time, hopefully the things that you've eaten are going to become natural to you, and it'll just come out. And so that would kind of be my approach and my take. If that makes sense.
Have you ever had anybody like, I mean, that's so opposite of like what people consider like worship. Like a lot of times worship is like, hey, we need to make this repetitive so the congregation can catch on quickly. And it seems like yours is complete opposite. Have you ever had anybody say like, hey, you need to chill out, like we need to make this a little more singable? Like,
I mean, yeah, but I do actually feel really lucky that I think especially in the Hillsong stuff, they really sort of made a place for me and what I was doing. And I think that the benefit of that for me is that I had people around me that knew how to write those songs. So like you've got Ruben and Ben, and I mean, they're really just, the list is endless of all these amazing people that their wheelhouse is writing songs that everyone can sing. And so I think there was kind of room for me to be like, well, you go write the songs that nobody can sing but might sound interesting. Not that the other ones don't, but at all. Some of my favorite songs are their songs, but just like there was kind of space for me to kind of go a bit wild. And then every now and then people sing them anyway, which I'm really grateful for. And I think in reflection, like there's things that I realized. I mean, So Will I is a good example, because at the time I remember saying to Cass, like our worship pastor in Sydney, I was like, if people sing this song, I'm going to quit songwriting teaching. I'm going to quit teaching songwriting, because I was like, no one's going to sing this. It's too hard. It's too many lyrics. And then the next week she sent me a video of it like being sung, and so I was like, I guess I'm quitting. But the thing that I realized with a song like that in retrospect, and this, I'm kind of just being a songwriting nerd now, but we're and this is entirely accident, but you know the way most songs you've got like you've got less lyrics and the chorus repeats, right? But the melodies tend to be a bit more adventurous because of that. Whereas in So Will I, there's obviously a gazillion lyrics, but there's actually only 4 melodic motifs in the whole song. So you've got like da 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 da, that was just the verse, and then the start of the chorus da 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 da, and then the third one is da 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 da, and then the fourth one is da 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 da. So the whole song doesn't at any point stray from those things. Like the bridge is the da 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 da. It's the last line of the chorus. And I think perhaps the stability of there not actually being very much melody for people to have to learn allows for more room for the lyrics to get adventures. Does that make sense? It's like there needs to be the things, which was not something I was thinking about at all at the time. But in retrospect, that's how I've rationalized the fact that people sing along.
It blows my mind. I specifically remember at my home church, somebody wanted to sing that when it first came out, and I was like, my church is never going to sing this. They're never going to catch on to this.
Right.
And like, it's one of the ones that's still like, when I go home, it's still in rotation. Like it's crazy. Like the congregation like sings all the intervals and the verses and everything. It just blows my mind that works, you know?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, same, to be honest. I'll never get this. Yeah, it is. It's one of the coolest things that I got to be a part of that. And yeah, you know, people will be like, sometimes people say to me, like, I'm going out on tour with actually I can probably say this now. Well, I'm going out on tour with Cody in February, which I'm really excited about, and then Brandon Lake in April, which I think that gets announced today, so it should be fine to say. And Brandon and I were talking the other day, and he was like, do you get like, do you want to, is it like, are you okay singing So Will I? Like, I know you're probably tired of singing it by now. And I was like, honestly, bro, I was like, I don't think I'll ever get tired of singing that song, just because like it's been I feel so privileged to be a part of it. And I also don't really understand when like people are like, oh, I don't want to sing that song anymore. I've sung it 1,000 times. It's like that just feels so ungrateful to me. It's like you could have no songs that people want to listen to. So just be grateful that you have one and get on with singing.
Man,
That's crazy.
Anyway,
could I mean, at the risk of being semi-controversial, I'm not sure if you like, I've heard like your answer, but like I'm sure you know, because the song says evolving, there's hot controversy in the church. Like, can we just hear from you your heart on that lyric? Like, I would just love to like hear you talk about it.
And and I've got away talking about this for 7 years, and you're the first person
Are you serious? No one wanted to go for it. Like, there's no way.
Somehow I have dodged this one for 7 years.
I mean, we can keep moving too if you don't want to go after it. That's fine.
I want to hear it now.
I respect the question. I've been waiting for it for a long time. And to be honest, I had a whole answer prepared, and it's been so long that I can't even remember it. I had my appropriate PR response, which was something to the effect of let me see if I can remember it, and then I'll maybe give you an honest answer. It was something like evolving has the word evolving has a plethora of meanings and connotations, and it's a broad word, and so it can be used in a plethora of ways, and I encourage you to use it to worship in spirit and truth. It was something to that. It was something PR-y like that.
Yeah.
I mean, really, man, that is kind of the heart behind it, is that I think I was trying to pull more people along. And so I think there's some people in the church that obviously don't like the idea of evolution, and there's some people in the church that do.
Sure.
And the people who don't would act like the other people aren't really Christians if they do. And then the people that do would be like, well, I don't know, we just think about the Bible differently, or so really I was like, well, here's a word that for all its kind of controversy can actually grab both those people at the same time and pull them forward. And I think so for people that are growing up, especially young people that do love science and that don't see a conflict with that science in the Bible, like they'll have a place then to be like, kind of what I was saying earlier, like, oh, I'm not crazy. Like I can this same God, there's actually a way for this to work. And I really do think there is. Like I think theologically there's a real pathway there for people, but it doesn't, that's up to people to go and figure out with God and with the Bible and with whatever. And then on the flip, there's people that there's lots of different people that take the Bible literally, people that take it, and I guess that's my point, in all kinds of ways. And the word is broad enough to grab both those people, because no one's ever really, I don't, especially even in congregations where I feel like probably it would be more the former, like most people view it literally. Literally is not even the right word, but I never feel like people stop singing for that point. I feel like it's still and gives them something to sing. So if I'm helping grab a few more, and I don't think, that might be really offensive to some people, or they might think it's surprising, but really part of it is to widen the net. And I don't think it's sacrilegious to widen the net that far. I think there's a way for it to work. Yeah.
There it is. I can't believe nobody's asked you that. Yeah.
I'm blown away.
I need to go and think of a more concise answer. But
I think maybe it kind of just even your journey. Like I'm working on a PhD in worship, and just like constantly reading the Bible and like books about the Bible. And like, it feels like the more you learn about the Lord, the more you realize there's just a whole lot of mystery to everything about him. And sometimes it can be frustrating how much everybody wants to, this is exactly how he all completely makes sense. And it's like, I don't think he's meant to be made sense of.
I couldn't agree more. There's a song, I talk about that, a song, "The Jesus I Know," and the last verse kind of speaks to that. Because one of the things I find frustrating, especially in the pandemic people kind of find their voice, which was part of that's really awesome. But was how confident people are in who God is. And I'm not saying there can't be fundamentals. I'm not saying you can't know God.
Right.
Truly, but I do think how could you take something that's entirely infinite and then be so brazenly confident that you have that all figured out, and that you're right and everyone else is wrong? By the nature of infinity, like, you can't. Like, if God is infinite, then there is plenty of stuff that you don't know, and that stuff might counteract some of the stuff that you do, or it might, it's complicated, and the Bible's complicated. Like, there's a lot of different narratives there's a lot of different, you're kind of piecing together who God is through the eyes of all of these different people, and different people across time, and different stories, and it's not entirely easy to get a clear picture of that. It's actually a really complex thing, but the Bible really does a beautiful job, actually, of, in the midst of all that, having this amazing meta narrative where we can see the fundamentals, and we can see like these aspects of God that are kind of really these clear brushstrokes of story throughout. Yeah. But yeah, to be so brazen. Peter Enns has this book, The Sin of Certainty, and I think that kind of, the title itself kind of sums up what I'm trying to say there. Like, there's maybe something in being so sure that you don't have room to listen to anyone else's opinion, I think is maybe problematic. And I do think it's also, sorry, I'm probably going on too long, but I was talking to the Dean of Theology back in Sydney at the Hillsong College. He's a good friend of mine, and we would meet constantly to kind of just talk through stuff. And he's so smart, so he kind of press me in challenging directions and poke me a little bit in a good way. And one of the things he said, he was reading a book on the Eastern Orthodox tradition, and he said the difference he found when he looked at it was often in the West, our Christianity, we start with what we know and we leave room for mystery at the end. Whereas with the Eastern Orthodox tradition, they start with mystery and prayer, and from there figure out what they know about God. And I thought that was a really sweet, I thought that was really interesting, kind of flipping the dogma on its head a little bit, because we look at faith from a very Greek sort of perspective of like, it's black or it's white, it's truth or it's false. Whereas even like the Jews don't view it like that. The Old Testament wasn't written like that. It's far more, you can hold paradoxes, one in one hand and one in the other, and somehow you got to figure stuff out. Anyway, yeah, I find all that fascinating.
Yeah.
How did you end up? So you grew up in Ireland, as far as I know.
Yeah.
And then how did you get from Ireland to Sydney? Like, for Hillsong?
Yeah, I mean, I went out there to do the college. So I was in Ireland. I was 19. I was like busking. Do you guys know what that is? It's like the people that just sing on the streets, yelling at people for money. And so I was doing that, and I was in a band, and things kind of fell through. And so, yeah, I just kind of made the jump, went out to Sydney, did Bible college out there. And I mean, it was kind of a wild, journey. I was out there for about a year and a half. It kind of had a similar to what I've been talking about the last 3 years. I had my first sort of existential crisis, if you will, where I was like, I think Bible college was so intense for me in general that it just kind of, it was a lot. And so I came halfway through that. I got to the same sort of place where I was like, God, I don't even know where you are, who you are. And, but I know you're real. Like, I was like, I knew that much. I was like, or at least I'm going to choose to believe you are for the next 6 months. And in that next 6 months, he absolutely kind of blew my mind. So I ended up getting this. I was walking this lady. I was at a conference, kind of volunteering, and I was walking this lady to her car. So that was kind of my job. It was raining, and I was just holding an umbrella for some of the girls walking into the car. And I was walking this lady, and she stops we're having a normal conversation. She stops in the middle of the rain, turns around, looks me in the eyes, and is like, "Are you a writer?" And I was like, well, "Yeah, actually, I am." And she started prophesying over me in the middle of the rain in Sydney. It was like, I see in you the ability to express deep truth, and this is something you need to go after, whatever. And it absolutely shook me. Like, it was one of the first times I really felt like I heard from God in a way that I couldn't avoid it, or like it just went all the way through my body. I just knew. And pretty much the next day I started, the next day I wrote a song that ended up getting into church and us doing it. And then a couple of weeks later, I wrote a song called Captain, which ended up in one of the United records. And it kind of was this real life-changing moment. Like, at that point, I didn't think I was going to do worship music. I thought I was going to move to Bali, live on the beach, learn how to be a DJ to make money, and like write dance music. Like, that was actually my plan. I had it all. I had like $200 in my bank account, and I was like, I can make this work. So it was a complete sort of life altering experience. And then within that next 2 months, I met my wife, and yeah, it was really kind of crazy. It's because, and I think in it, I really didn't, to kind of what you were saying earlier about like, do people ever, with your songwriting, do people ever try to like box you in? I think so much of what happened to me in that prophecy was I felt like the limits. I felt like I stopped trying to write, because I tried to write worship music. Obviously, I'm in Bible college, but all my songs just sounded like really bad versions of Reuben songs. Like, I'm like, here's this guy writing these amazing songs for the church to sing, and I'm just writing really subpar versions of them. And this prophecy kind of gave me the ability for some reason to be like, okay, well, how do I want to say this? So if I was just writing directly to God, not worrying about whether people could sing it or not, what would it sound like? And that was kind of actually when I started writing songs that people were interested in singing. And so, yeah, it was a crazy time. And I guess, it's funny looking back that, you get to that place once where you're like, God, are you even right there? And then you get out of that and you're like, oh, I'll never think that again. Thank you so much for bringing me through that. You're so good. And then it's like, 7 years later, you're like, oh, here we are again. We're back. I didn't think that would happen so soon. But yeah, hopefully I'm not making the same record again in another 7 years.
Yeah. So where do you call home now?
LA. I had to think about that for a minute. Yeah. So I'm in LA, which it's been good. I've been there for about a year and a half. So I've got got married in Australia and got 2 Australian kids, and we all moved out there about a year and a half ago, which has been good.
Wow. That's 3 completely different places.
I know. It is. It's all over the place. And my wife wants to live in London so bad. So I'm probably going to have to add that to the list at some point.
Wow. So your wife is from Australia?
Yeah, she's from Australia.
Wow. So what do you do when you're not on tour? Like, what are you doing in LA?
I mean, honestly, this year has been insane. Like, I've barely been in LA, which has been hard. But we golf a lot, especially on tour. So that's super fun. Kind of keeps everything interesting, keeps each city kind of, well, not because you never really see the cities, you're just looking at the parking lot. So it kind of keeps things fun, get out and see the grass. But I really don't get to play much in LA. I mean, honestly, when I'm home, I'm normally catching up because with doing United and doing my own thing, like when I get home, I'm kind of having to catch up on one or the other. So I'll either be driving down to the OC to write with Joel and just hang out and work on stuff, or I'll be just home from a United tour and it's like, okay, I got to respond to like a million emails and I got to like get up to date with my stuff and keep things moving, write for my thing. So I haven't had much. I mean, I honestly haven't had really any off time this year. So I'm really looking forward to December where I can kind of just unwind a little bit. My parents are going to come over. My brother's going to come over. I'll just do a ton of barbecues, and sit in the sun, and maybe go skiing. Maybe drive to Big Bear or something and do some skiing. So I'm really looking forward to that in December. But yeah, I really don't know what I do in LA because I don't feel like I've really lived there yet.
Wow. This current tour, you're with Cody right now?
No, I'm with Tomlin and United.
Oh, Tomlin. Okay. And then
yeah.
But are you going? Did you say you're going with Cody?
Cody in February, which is gonna be super fun. I can't remember everywhere we're going, but if anyone follows me on Instagram, the link's in the bio and on Cody's Instagram and stuff. And then I am going with Brandon Lake in April, which is going to be super fun.
So who's your players right now for your band?
I mean, that's a really good question. I've only done a lot of the stuff I've done by myself. And then I've taken out Tenny and Joe Volk on a couple of things. It's been super fun. But yeah, aside from that, I haven't really. So I need to figure that out for those things and what I'm going to do. I think the Cody one we'll be up there together the whole time. So we'll be sharing a band, and I actually don't know if he's got a plan for that yet. I'm sure he does. And then with the Brandon one, I got to figure that out. But yeah, Tenny and Joe have been awesome. So
It's
and then maybe
it's so crazy to me that you have such a big network that like you're just like whoever like and it's like like the who's who of like worship players on stage with you no matter what. Like that's crazy.
It's really they really are all amazing. And I've got such good chemistry with all the United guys that if any of them fancy taking some more time and coming, then I'll always have room for them. But I don't know. We tour so much that they probably just want to be at home.
I'd love to, we're just about out of time here, but I'd love to maybe cap it if you have any encouragement as best as you can, knowing full well that it's going to be very specific for every person, but like your journey of like readily struggling with the Lord and just struggling, honestly, with just like the way we understand God and the way the church is functioning. Like I hear that a lot from young worship leaders, old worship leaders. Everybody seems kind of disenfranchised with almost everything. Like, do you have any encouragement for the person that is trying to struggle through that to maybe help them not just drop the whole thing? Like that seems like where a lot of people go anyway. Yeah.
Completely. I've got a lot of thoughts. Yeah, I think try your best not to get cynical would be the first thing, because I think it's hard to do anything productive once you're cynical. The problem is, I think really what happens is you've got these frameworks of your faith, right? And because faith is such a fundamental, important part of our lives, that kind of is a big piece. It's almost like it's another. It literally is a relationship, but it's like another. It's like your relationship with your wife or relationship with your kids or whatever. They're these fundamental building blocks that if something happens with your wife, like if there's a trust broken or something happens, it's kind of your world falls into a little bit of chaos while you try to put together the pieces. Well, I think it's kind of similar with faith. You have this relationship with God and who you know him to be. And if there's if one of the pillars of that kind of starts to get a bit shaky, it really does it can descend you into an element of chaos. And that's kind of what I experienced. I was feeling like depressed even and struggling, but I didn't know why. But I think it was just because God is so important to me and it's such a fundamental part of my life that when I felt like I didn't really know who he was anymore, or understand him, or everything was like, well, what do I know and what is real? And one of the fundamentals of my life had kind of been shifted. The paradigm was off. And so I think firstly, it's okay to admit that like you're struggling with that. And then I think it's the only way is to go on the journey of kind of figuring out what is real. I think there's obviously a lot of negative connotations around the idea of deconstruction, but I think that's really interesting because I think nobody willingly tears down a house that's perfectly good. Like nobody's tearing down their mansion for the sake of it and just building another mansion. I think you only tear down a house when there's something wrong with it, or it's going to break anyway, or it's already crumbled and you're just pretending it hasn't. So I actually think deconstruction is really, I think it's necessary because you're trying to, if you get there, if your house is perfectly fine, then great, keep it going. But if there's things that need to change and you realize they're not working and things are already kind of crumbling on you, then it's probably time to accept that and to try to have a bit of a rebuild and figure out, okay, well, the things that I thought as a 19-year-old about God, I've seen a bit more of the world. I've learned a bit more. I maybe just don't. It doesn't all doesn't line up the same. And I have always found, even to this day, that when I've pursued God in that regard, aspects of the Bible that didn't make sense actually start to come alive over time. There'll be stories that, in hindsight, actually they get a new meaning almost, and they actually do make a lot more sense to me. So I think staying in the fight is important. Trying your best not to become cynical in the midst of that. Because, sorry, to my point before, when you do descend into the chaos that I was talking about, it's a natural part of that is to become cynical and kind of hate the world around you. That's a really common thing. You see it. Kierkegaard talks about it as like the night of resignation. It's like you become bitter and there's nothing to live for. But I think fighting beyond that for the hope again, and rebuilding whatever the pillars are in a positive way, that you see the light at the end of the tunnel. I think all my favorite music does that. And really with the record, that's what I was doing, is giving people the hope at the end of it, saying, yeah, sometimes things suck, and sometimes it's not all working like you thought it did, or sometimes, the things that how do I say that the right way? Almost like the way you translated the things you learned in Sunday school don't quite make sense. Yeah. The way that comes to real life, and we see that all the time. There's no point pretending like it doesn't exist. Like people say, like I know God can heal people, and I know that, but we say things like, God's in the room and he's going to heal you today, and then people die of cancer, and it's like, okay, well, there's a real disconnect there.
Yeah.
And so it's trying to figure out, okay, well, which of these things, what do I actually think about God? What is the Bible actually saying? And how do I build this thing that's going to be sustainable for the next little while? And I think it's agile. Like, I think you learn in time. You often, like, I remember as a kid talking to older people and not really understanding their perspective. Like, they felt like a lot less like, I don't know. It's almost like the wisdom of time kind of gives you a certain ease and assurance that things are going to be okay. But young people are so much more like, let's go after this, let's grab it. Sorry, I really am rambling at this point, but
that is great.
Yeah, I would say stay in the ring. You're going to be okay, but try not to hit the world.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. We cannot wait to see you again. Make sure to head over to Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, YouTube, wherever you are. Shoot us a DM. We would love to chat with you. We absolutely love it. Talk to you later.